For more than 6 decades, she's been a fixture in our lives. She's an actress with such profound talent and infectious charm that she feels less like a distant star and more like family. From the sun-kissed beaches of Gidget to the defiant factories of Norma Rae. From the steadfast matriarch in Forrest Gump to the grieving mother in Steel Magnolias, Sally Field has built a career of unforgettable characters, earning 2 Academy Awards and the enduring love of a nation. She is, by all accounts, America's sweetheart and embodiment of pluck, warmth, and resilience. But the story we all know, the one played out on screens big and small, is only half the truth. To millions, she's the flying nun and Forrest Gump's devoted mother and icon of American optimism. But the sunny disposition and iconic smile that made Sally Field a national treasure were forged in a childhood of profound pain and secrecy. For decades, she hid a story of devastating trauma. This is the heartbreaking story of the life Sally Field lived when the cameras weren't rolling. The story begins in Pasadena, California, where Sally Field was born on November 6, 1946, into a world that was, from the start, wrapped up in the business of make-believe. Her mother, Margaret Field, was a beautiful actress herself, a contract player at Paramount. Her father, Richard Dryden Field, was a pharmacist who served in the Army during World War II. On the outside, it looked like a picture of post-war American promise, but that picture was already cracked. Her parents' marriage fell apart in 1950 when Sally was just 4 years old. 2 years later, her mother remarried, and the man who entered their lives would cast a long, dark shadow over Sally's entire life. He was Jock Mahoney, a charismatic and imposing stuntman and actor known for his work in westerns. To the world, he could be magical, a larger-than-life charmer. But behind closed doors, a different, secret reality unfolded. From a young age until her early teens, Sally Field was sexually abused by her stepfather. In her haunting 2018 memoir, In Pieces, Field finally gave a voice to the silent agony of her childhood. She described a confusing and terrifying dynamic, a profound violation that shattered her innocence and warped her understanding of power, safety, and love. She wrote about the bewildering conflict she felt, stating, "I felt both a child, helpless, and not a child, powerful. This was power, and I owned it. But I wanted to be a child." This harrowing contradiction is a common and deeply damaging feature of childhood abuse. The abuse was a constant, menacing presence in her home, the one place a child should feel safe. She later wrote that it would have been easier if her stepfather had been purely cruel, but the mix of his charm and his violation was a toxic, confusing cocktail. It was a systematic grooming process that left her feeling isolated and utterly alone. The abuse finally stopped when she was 14, but the damage was embedded deep within her, a series of invisible wounds that would ache for decades. The question of whether her mother knew loomed large for most of Sally's life. As a child, she felt she couldn't expect protection from her mother, who was often grappling with her own struggles. It was a painful silence that stretched for years. Only much later, shortly before her mother's death in 2011, did a moment of devastating clarity arrive. Her mother confessed she had known about at least one instance of the abuse. For Field, it was a gut-wrenching confirmation of a lifetime of unspoken pain. As a teenager, Sally Field was a cheerleader at Birmingham High School, outwardly a typical California girl, but inwardly she was grappling with severe depression, an anxiety rooted in her childhood trauma. The abuse left her feeling fragmented, or as she would later title her memoir, In Pieces. Acting classes became her lifeline, a way to channel the roiling emotions she felt festering inside her. It was how she found a voice when she felt she had none. Then at just 17, another life-altering crisis struck. In 1964, 9 years before Roe v. Wade, Sally found herself pregnant. In an era where contraception wasn't readily available, especially for unmarried young women, her options were terrifyingly limited. A family doctor arranged for a secret illegal abortion in Tijuana, Mexico. The experience was beyond harrowing. She described being driven across the border with her mother, handed an envelope full of cash, and pointed toward a scroungy-looking building. The procedure was beyond hideous and life-altering. She was given almost no anesthetic, just a few puffs of ether that left her limbs numb but her senses fully aware of the excruciating pain. Compounding the physical agony, the technician molested her during the procedure. She remembered struggling to make her numb arms move to push him away, a moment steeped in what she could only describe as an absolute pit of shame. This event was a profound trauma layered on top of existing trauma. She has spoken of the shame she carried for decades, a feeling ingrained in her by the culture of the 1950s, yet, in a strange, paradoxical way, this horrific turning point became a catalyst. It was a brutal dividing line in her life. Just a few months after that trip to Mexico, she began auditioning. Almost immediately, she landed the role that would make her a star, the bubbly, carefree surfer girl in the TV series Gidget. It was the ultimate mask. While America fell in love with the sun-drenched teenager on their screens, the real young woman was secretly piecing together the shattered fragments of her life, hiding a universe of pain behind that iconic girl next door. Smile. With Gidget and then the Flying Nun, Sally Field became a household name. But for an actress desperate to explore the darker, more complex corners of her own psyche, these roles felt like a gilded cage. She was typecast as a lightweight comedic actress, a perception that deeply frustrated her. Seeking to break free, she began studying at the legendary Actors Studio with Lee Strasberg, who saw past the perky TV image and helped her dig deeper into her craft. Her personal life was also in flux. She married her first husband, Stephen Craig, in 1968, and they had two sons, Peter and Eli. The marriage ended in 1975, right as she was fighting to redefine herself professionally. The breakthrough came in 1976 with the TV movie Sybil. Field took on the demanding role of a young woman with multiple personality disorder shaped by horrific child abuse. Her performance was a revelation, raw, terrifying, and utterly convincing, earning her an Emmy and shattering the public's perception of her. For Field, it was more than a role. It was a way to explore the landscape of trauma through the safety of a character. It was on the heels of this triumph that she began the most famous, and perhaps most damaging romantic relationship of her life with Burt Reynolds. They met on the set of Smokey and the Bandit, and their on-screen chemistry translated into a massive box office hit. They became Hollywood's golden couple, but behind the dazzling spotlight, the relationship was a painful echo of her past. In her memoir, Field described their connection as a perfect match of flaws, admitting she was trying to exorcise the demons of her relationship with her stepfather through Reynolds. She wrote that he was controlling, a dynamic she was tragically pre-programmed to accept. He was dismissive of her ambitions and jealous of her talent. This came to a head when she was nominated for an Academy Award for Norma Ray. It was the role of a lifetime, one that cemented her status as a serious actress. Reynolds, however, was anything but supportive and refused to go to the Oscars with her. On the biggest night of her professional life, Sally Field went to the Academy Awards with friends. She won, delivering a speech of pure, unadulterated joy. A few years later, she'd win her second Oscar for Places in the Heart and deliver her famously earnest and often misquoted line, "I can't deny the fact that you like me. Right now. Do you like me?" These moments of public triumph were hard-won battles. Her relationship with Reynolds finally ended for good in 1982, years later. Reynolds would publicly call her the love of his life, a sentiment she found confusing. For her, it wasn't a great love story, but a painful chapter she needed to close to truly find herself. After the tumult with Burt Reynolds, Sally Field continued to build an extraordinary career with beloved films like Steel Magnolias, Mrs. Doubtfire, and Forrest Gump. She married her second husband, producer Alan Greisman, in 1984, and they had a son, Sam. Before divorcing in 1994, she poured her energy into her work and her three sons, creating a life of stability. But as she entered her late 50s, a new challenge emerged, one that attacked her from within. In 2005, at age 59, Sally Field was diagnosed with osteoporosis, The disease weakens bones and is often called a silent disease. Field was shocked. She said, "I had always eaten right. I had always exercised. I tried to be a good girl all the way down the line, but it was going to get me." She fit the primary risk profile, a thin, small-boned Caucasian woman over 50. The diagnosis was frightening, but true to form, Field refused to let fear dictate her life. She transformed her personal health struggle into a public mission, launching the Rally with Sally for Bone Health campaign to raise awareness. She became a vocal advocate, encouraging women to get bone density scans and understand their risks. She spoke openly about her treatment, sending a powerful message that the disease was not an inevitable part of aging. This advocacy marked a new chapter. The woman who had hidden her deepest pains was now speaking openly about a personal health issue. Her activism didn't stop there. Inspired by her youngest son, Sam, who is gay, she became a passionate advocate for LGBTQ+ rights, winning an award from the Human Rights Campaign in 2012. She has been arrested at climate change protests with Jane Fonda and has championed women's rights and reproductive freedom for 7 years. Sally Field embarked on her most difficult project, writing her life story. The result, her 2018 memoir In Pieces, was not a Hollywood tell-all but a raw, introspective exploration of a life lived in fragments. The book was born from a need to understand herself, a process that began after her mother's death in 2011. The memoir's central thread is her complicated and painful relationship with her mother. It's an attempt to make sense of the woman who was her entire world, yet who couldn't protect her. The book finally gave voice to the secrets she had carried for over 60 years, the sexual abuse, the traumatic abortion, and the web of shame and confusion that followed. Publishing the book was an act of immense courage, but in doing so she found a strange sense of wholeness. By finally assembling the broken pieces of her past, she could begin to heal. In recent years, her voice as an activist has only grown stronger. After a hiatus from social media, she returned in August 2024, energized by the political landscape. She posted in support of candidates she believed would protect democracy and human rights most powerfully. In October 2024, she once again shared the story of her illegal abortion. She spoke of the enduring shame but also of the urgent need to ensure future generations don't face the same horrors. She pleaded, "These are the things that women are going through now. Please, we can't go back." It was the voice of a woman who had been to the brink and back, using the full weight of her heartbreaking experience to fight for others. Sally Field's journey is a powerful reminder that behind every public smile can be a private story of immense struggle. Her courage in sharing her truth has illuminated dark corners and started important conversations. For more stories about the incredible resilience of iconic figures, be sure to subscribe to our channel. At 78, the tragedy of Sally Field isn't just the pain she endured, but the decades of silence she had to keep. It's the story of a little girl whose childhood was stolen, a young woman who faced an impossible choice in a sterile room in Mexico, and a brilliant actress who often had to hide her true self to survive. But her story doesn't end in tragedy. It is ultimately a profound story of resilience. It's the story of a woman who took the fragmented pieces of a broken past and, through her art, activism, and raw honesty, painstakingly assembled them into a life of meaning and purpose. Sally Field's legacy isn't just written in her Oscars or her iconic roles. It's written in her courage to speak truth to power, to turn pain into advocacy, and to show the world that it is never too late to reclaim your own story. Her life is a testament not just to surviving, but to thriving, a powerful lesson from America's sweetheart, who proved to be its greatest fighter all along.